Yeah, because both the girls really love and they do that cast program in the summer. I call it Little Barfield.
Hello and welcome everyone to our 9 a.m. board briefing. It is Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners Jordan, Waldrop, and Kearns are present in the conference room, and then we have Commissioner French joining us on Zoom. We are going to lead off today with a presentation from Detective Timothy Schwering from the City of Spokane Police Department. So take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today. Again, my name is Tim Schwering, and we have I'll start racing through until we have the PowerPoint up here. You can hit the next slide. Perfect. Again, my name is Tim Schwering from Spokane Police Department. I'm in the Criminal Intelligence Unit, working on a number of cases involving cryptocurrency. I'll give you a quick background. I was initially trained up on using or investigating cryptocurrency because we were seeing a lot of it in drug trafficking and human trafficking cases. And then once I came back after the training, realized there's a whole elder fraud and it's really hitting everybody, scam involving cryptocurrency that is going to require a fairly big lift. And I think it's going to be a legislative lift. So I wanted to kind of bring it to everyone's attention. Go ahead and hit the next slide. What is cryptocurrency? We could have a whole week-long presentation on what is cryptocurrency. I'm not going to bore you to tears with that. Just think of it as a digital asset that can be moved through the internet to pay for goods and or services. There's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, if you feel like it, all sorts of different coins, I think we're over 10,000 coins that are out there. So go ahead and hit the next slide. This is an example. We're going to start with this. This is what I see when I conduct an investigation. So a lot of times you're going to see a wallet or an ATM machine, and that dot there on the far left-hand side is a Bitcoin ATM machine here in Spokane, Washington. I was able to get the receipt from the victim that has a whole address, which is a alphanumeric number or an alphanumeric code that is specific to that ATM machine. So what happened, this one was a specific romance scam. And to put it into context, this schematic here is a very, very simplistic graph. A lot of these can go on for many moves that can take hours to trace. But anyway, the money was put into that first dot there on the left-hand side and then moved into that dot next to it. That is the suspect wallet. From that wallet, you can see it then spreads from there and then ends up at the far right-hand side. You're going to see different dots there that are called exchanges. For very, very simplistic purposes, think of when I say a cryptocurrency wallet, think of an account that you might have at a bank, checking account, savings account. It's just an entity that holds value. When I talk about an exchange, think of that as more of a financial institution. Think of it as like a Wells Fargo, Chase, what have you, entities that hold a lot of wallets. The problem with those exchanges over there is they are all currently sitting in China. We do not have diplomatic relationships with China, and so they might as well be on the other side of the moon because we cannot claw those back. In a lot of cases, if it goes to, or even in a typical fraud investigation, where you're able to trace the money and track it to an account, you're usually able to seize that account, bring the money back, and then try to give as much back to the victim as humanly possible to make them whole. The key point, and this is going to come up later here in the presentation, again, when you go to a Bitcoin ATM machine and you get that receipt, you're going to get that full address that tells you exactly where to go. And that's what helps start the investigation right away, and we're able to trace it very quickly. Go ahead and hit the next slide. And again, these are being used in a number of different ways with cryptocurrencies. Again, drug trafficking, we're seeing a lot of that, and because it's a very useful tool, because in a lot of sense, if you are a cartel in Mexico selling fentanyl here in the United States and you made your profits, it makes it very difficult to move physical money back to Mexico. If you use money through the banking system, that will usually alert BSA laws as far as suspicious activity reports, CTR reports, 8300 reports. Go ahead and head to the next slide. Human trafficking is another one we're seeing, same type of thing. Again, they are in the business of making money, whether that's with drugs, people, or guns. And so you're seeing a lot of money being moved, obviously, on human trafficking cases as well through cryptocurrency. Go ahead and hit the next slide. We are now seeing more in child exploitations, child sexual abuse materials, where people are paying for that online on the dark web. I haven't dealt a lot with that, but I know that is a growing concern with the departments and agencies that deal a lot with the CSAM material. So they're seeing a lot more cryptocurrency exchange instead of just regular money being used to purchase that material. Go ahead and hit the next slide. Again, dark marketplace trading, that is where you're going to see, I mean, pretty much you can buy anything you want to there. That is something that we're not really working on right now at Spokane Police Department because we're so kind of overwhelmed with the fraud cases that are involving cryptocurrency. But just know that that is cryptocurrency is being used almost exclusively on the dark web. Go ahead and hit the next slide. A lot of these, when you're doing, and you noticed on the first or the second graph there where you saw the chart, a lot of those wallets will then have attributions that you can see what those wallets have been used for in the past for previous investigations. A lot of them will show whether it's drug trafficking, human trafficking, terrorist financing. We have seen wallets that have been used, that have been part of our investigation here where that's linked to terrorist financing. Go ahead and hit the next slide. Fraud, and that's going to be the big one here today. So I was telling someone here before the presentation started, I had gotten trained up on cryptocurrency, went to the Secret Service school down in Alabama with the thought of working exclusively on drug trafficking and human trafficking cases involving cryptocurrency. What I didn't realize when I came back is that we've had an onslaught of cases involving cryptocurrency where people are getting defrauded daily here in city of Spokane, but Spokane County and across the nation. I will give an example where we had a case of a woman who had gotten scammed. She's an elderly woman, recently widowed, and she had been contacted by people that thought, stated that they were with the U.S. Treasuries and the U.S. Marshals. And they said that she was under investigation and she needed to move her money quickly to avoid it getting seized or all sorts of bad things happening. For context on how they were messaging her, they were using cell phones and also email. Email, for example, in the olden days of email where you see the entire email address, those were very easy to see exactly where it's coming from. These were marked as, if it's Tim Schwerin, usually it shows Tim Schwerin on Outlook. In this case, it said U.S. Treasury or U.S. Marshals. When you actually had to click on it to see it, it said ustreasury.gov@gmail.com. So that's kind of the method that they're using for these types of things. This was concerning in a number of ways. Obviously, she had put money into a Bitcoin ATM machine here in town to the tune of a little over $100,000. I was able to trace that to the West Indies, to a country that doesn't have a diplomatic relationship with the United States, hence we cannot get the money back. The other concern was she had then wired about $250,000 to a local coin dealer here in town, and then bought bullion. And so they came to her residence at the retirement home. They were smart enough not to go inside where all the cameras are at, and they took all that gold. So there's concerns on the cryptocurrency, wiring money, and then having assets here in the area to pick up the physical gold was very, very concerning. Go ahead, next slide. This is an example of one of the cases that we'd had that fortunately the victim knew that this was an attempted scam. I always point out, this is the presentation or part of the presentation that I give to Rotary's retirement communities on kind of the warning signs of these scams. Again, Facebook, you've got a first and last name that are the same name. That's usually a tip-off. You've got somebody that looks like she's probably in her mid-20s saying she's new to Facebook. I always point out to people that no one is new to Facebook in 2024. This person who was getting scammed was around my age. So I always like to point out that I have aged out of any physical appeal I may have once had. So it seems very unlikely that the person who looks like that is going to be messaging somebody my age. So there's also the reality aspect of that. Go ahead, next slide. So they, again, serve as a conduit for multiple illegal purposes. And the cryptocurrency ATMs are kind of what I'm focusing on right now. If you were to go to Wells Fargo, US Bank, and use their ATM machine, 99% of the time, those are used for legitimate purposes. The cryptocurrency ATMs, I have yet to be able to determine a legitimate use for them, other than somebody just trying to dabble in when they first start getting into cryptocurrency. The problem with them is their fees are astronomical. We're talking at least 20% fees just for the use of the machine. But what's happening is, and we could theoretically go back to that slide that I showed you. You don't need to do that. But that first dot where the ATM machine is, there were, on that case, and where it was interesting, is there's about 20 to 25 other deposits that went into that ATM machine that went into the same suspect wallet. And so what that tells me is that for every one person that then reports the crime, you have 30 others that aren't reporting it. And again, fair enough to a certain extent. That isn't something that you probably wouldn't necessarily think to report to your local law enforcement, and rightly so, because there's not many law enforcement agencies that are up to speed on cryptocurrency. And so there's IC3, which is the FBI's database that tracks that as well. I'll also provide information there, but they usually work cases that are much, much bigger. So because the problem here is what we're seeing is that we've got a multitude of cases that, are certain. I've had cases over $1 million, but a lot of them are in the $10,000 to $250,000 range. And that's not something usually the feds are going to touch. The other concerning part and we'll get back to this a little further, is the cryptocurrencies or cryptocurrency ATM machines are being used nationwide. In the example I gave you of the woman that had put money into the cryptocurrency ATM machine, I had done a search warrant on the phone number that had contacted her. It was based out of Canada, called TextNow. They actually were pleasant and wanted to comply with the search warrant, even though they were out of country, and received about 60 to 70 different phone numbers that the suspects had been calling. So then we're calling nationwide, trying to explain that you don't know me, I'm from the government, but I'm telling you now that the person from the government that called you earlier is trying to scam you. We were able to stop a few of those transactions from happening, but unfortunately, most of the people I talked to had already been scammed. I was north of $10 million on total scams just from that one phone number, just in about a month period. Go ahead in the next slide. Bitcoin ATM machines. Again, prior to myself getting into training on Bitcoin, I wouldn't have even known there was Bitcoin ATM machines here in the area. We have quite a few. It depends on what analytics or what entity is counting them. There's some saying there's about 38 here in town. If you hit the next slide, this is a whole long list that goes on for about, I think it was about 40 just entities just in Bitcoin ATM machines alone, just here in Spokane County. That's where it gets concerning, because there's not a great regulation on these. When I first brought this up with the state, with DFI and FinTech, they had classified ATMs as remitters, which isn't really correct. I know they're in the process of correcting that now. And they've actually been great to work with. We're putting warning signs now on ATMs, or I should say they are putting warning signs on ATM machines that if someone's telling you to put this money in the ATM because of taxes or what have you, that it's more than likely a scam. So, but that's kind of a slow moving process. Go ahead to the next slide. Here's the latest concern, and this is within the last month. So you can see on the right-hand side, that is a receipt, again, from an actual case that I worked. And you can see the alphanumeric code there, and that is the wallet address or the transaction address is where that's usually listed. And that is what I use where I can immediately start tracing that cryptocurrency. It's usually Bitcoin or Ethereum, but I can immediately start tracing it. And if I can catch it in time into an exchange that has where they accept a US search warrant, I can usually freeze the money and get it back. That happens less likely than I would prefer. But what's recently happened now on the left-hand side is you see those CoinMe receipts. What they've now started doing is not providing the wallet where it's going on the receipts, which basically shuts down the investigation before it even starts. So we can go to the next slide. That's just a close-up of the address that I had been referring to. That is, again, what you use to trace cryptocurrency in criminal investigation. Go ahead for the next slide. And so there's several concerns here. There are, I can do a request for a search for FinCEN material, which is under the Bank Secrecy Act, and that will provide 8,300 reports, suspicious activity reports, cash transaction reports. Banks are usually very good at complying with that. What I'm not seeing, and that doesn't mean necessarily it's not there, but what I'm not seeing is that for these types of transactions on a Bitcoin ATM machine, I'm not seeing corresponding CTR reports that should have been filed because they do fall under the AML laws and the Bank BSA laws where they should be reporting that. So the concern then becomes is that would be a very good, it's a very useful tool for people that are committing various crimes to move money. And what we're seeing a lot of it is moving money cross borders. China is a big one. And again, we're seeing this a lot with cryptocurrency, but also wire transfers. The concern I have is that, again, using my example of the woman who had wired money, that was to a local coin dealer. That was certainly concerning, but we've had cases where we've had people wire money directly to banks in Hong Kong. And so in those instances, I know the bank name, I know the owner of the account, I know the account number. And I have tried to work with those banks with zero success and to try to work with them on getting money back. They recommend that I talk with the Hong Kong Police Department. You can guess how well that goes. So again, that is something that I'm frankly concerned about, that we are having a lot of people that are getting scammed. And in instances where some banks will let them send money via wire transfer, other banks will tell their customers flat out, this is a scam, we're not conducting this transaction. So there seems to be a gap in policy on how how the banks operate there. Go ahead to the next slide. So again, this is dealing with the local level, county level, and then you're working with the state DFI. And there's probably going to be a legislative fix that's going to be required for this as well, both probably at the state and federal level. I've been talking with the FDIC, I've talked with the Federal Trade Commission. I'll be talking to Kathy Morris-Rogers here at the end of the month to kind of get this addressed. But what the goal here is that to work with legislation for the next legislative session here in the state to get basically the laws tightened up on the use of cryptocurrency machines. California and Connecticut have both passed laws that limit the amount of money that can be put into a crypto ATM machine to $500 to $1,500 per day. The idea behind that is that slows the money that can go. You can't deposit a full $100,000 in one Bitcoin ATM machine, with the hope being that if you're on your third Bitcoin ATM machine as you're driving around Spokane, it might dawn on someone that they probably are getting scammed, or at least to make a phone call to somebody with the U.S. Marshal's Office to see if they really do have to put that money in a crypto ATM machine, so to at least stem the tide. The other part of that legislation will include mandating that they put those wallet addresses back on the receipts, because then there's no way to trace that after that when that is gone. Because if I were to then reach out to CoinMe, that could take 20 days to get that information. By that point, the money is gone. Because normally these types of investigations have to be done within a day. I've worked with Crime Check and 911. Again, we're a government entity, so we're not super efficient all the time, but I've got it set up that I will usually get an email immediately if anyone utters the word cryptocurrency in a call for service. So that's what we're trying to do here locally. So moving forward, my ask is going to be is that we come together as a county, and I'm talking with obviously you, talking with other municipalities here in the county to kind of get recommendations on legislation for the next session. So we're all kind of speaking with one voice. So I could go on about cryptocurrency for quite some time. However, it's probably best to open it up for questions if you have any.
Any questions?
Good question.
Yeah, go for it.
Is there any, thanks for the information, first of all. Is there any legislators kind of working to draft any specific bills yet that you're aware of in Olympia?
No, I talked with a few legislators last session. It was a shorter session. Part of the problem is once you start talking about cryptocurrency, sometimes the eyes glaze over. They're not necessarily sure it's a kind of such a new technology that they're not necessarily sure what we're talking about. And when we start talking about Bitcoin ATM machines, sometimes it's lost. And that's kind of why we're doing the education campaign. But yeah, Mike Voss, Bolts, thank you, I'm meeting with him beginning of next month to kind of start drafting what that should look like.
Scott?
Thanks, Tim. I'm presuming the Bitcoin ATMs are legitimate. It's transactions that are occurring on there that are illegitimate. Can be illegitimate.
Yes, so that is part of the issue too, and this is a state issue because they are all supposed to be registered. Talking with DFI and kind of comparing to what they have as far as registered machines versus what I know is out there aren't necessarily matching up. The other concern is kind of getting back to what I was talking about is that you could theoretically have a legitimate machine, but if it's being used 98% of the time for illegal activity, then we might have some problems. And I'm also looking at least within the city, making that under the chronic nuisance civil process, saying notifying the owners of the facility, because again, these aren't in down by the banks, these Bitcoin ATM machines. These are at, not besmirching any entity here, but Divines, Piggy Mart. I didn't even know we had a Piggy Mart here in town. I mean, those types of places that are in communities that are not necessarily more affluent, so targeting people that certainly don't have the money to lose in the first place.
And then what message would you have for those who are watching on the public, or just as the commissioners maybe I'm talking, just a quick little, what should people be looking for to be aware to avoid these types of scams?
Absolutely. So the first thing is that no one from the government, and really no one in general, should be reaching out to you saying they need you to send them money via cryptocurrency. I can almost guarantee, and I rarely provide guarantees, but if the phrase cryptocurrency comes out in a conversation with somebody, you're probably being scammed. And again, the government is not going to say that you need to pay them money to avoid a warrant. The only people that ever contact you about money with the US government or with any government is the IRS, and they do that via mail. So no one will be contacting you through phone, email, text messaging saying that you owe them money.
We have a pretty big followers of the BOCC meeting, so
I
this
can
message
imagine.
will get magnified.
Yeah, it's going to be
It's huge.
huge.
Talk of the town.
Yes.
Tens of people.
Well,
That's where
Scott,
it starts. That's where
Scott
it
had
starts.
asked us to cue something up here before the meeting.
Yeah, if the commissioners would indulge me. I knew Tim back when he was wearing a different uniform with a suit and tie and much cleaner. And he decided to go into uniformed, went through Lee Academy and stuff. And so he's kind of a famous person in town here.
Wow, celebrity in our
Well, let's
town.
cue it up.
Our Tim Schwerin.
You're welcome. Thank you for that. What was amusing about that is that when I went, there was all sorts of rumors that the sole purpose was to be the next chief of police. So I was like, I'm just going to hide and be under the radar. It's going to be really great. And then that happens, and then we make national news. So it didn't work out quite as planned. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for what you're doing here. Thank you for educating us. I think we all learned a ton in that.
Absolutely. And as we get closer to getting kind of what draft language should look like for legislative fixes, that's when I will kind of swing back and chat with everybody.
Sounds great.
Mr. Commissioner,
Appreciate your time. Thank you so
Yep,
much.
Pat?
just gonna mention real quick, with the encouragement of Officer Schwerin, the county has created a PSA on cryptocurrency that I can send around. on cryptocurrency scams, providing some FTC resources. The sheriff and the chair recorded some remarks probably a month ago. We're trying to get it on 2, 4, 6, 5, and 7. So
It's good.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Aaron Gertel, Director of Fair and Expo Center, we have Aaron online. How you doing, Aaron?
Good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. You're gonna talk to us about the 2024 City of Spokane Valley Lodging Tax Agreement.
Look at that. You pretty much summarized it there. Boom. Done. Brief.
Gina keeps me prepared every
Yes.
meeting.
Well, definitely not as exciting as cryptocurrency this morning, but would like to just brief you on the grant that we've been awarded from the City of Spokane Valley Lodging Tax Program. We've been awarded $55,250,000, and it is on your agenda for approval on March 26th. This grant provides us the opportunity to enhance our marketing efforts for the fair. So that's social media, traditional TV, print, radio. We're also doing more with ag influencers on the social channels such as TikTok and Instagram. And again, just looking for your approval on this next week. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Aaron? Nope, I think that's great. Thank you.
All right, and I'll be circling back with you soon to talk about fair entertainment lineup for the next couple weeks.
Okay, that's something I was actually asking around. I said, what time of year does Aaron usually give us the inside scoop on who the entertainment is? So we're
It's
looking forward to it.
awesome, great. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, next up we have Dr. Veena Singh, our medical examiner. She has a briefing for federal earmark requests, a DNA rapid test machine. Dr. Singh, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I did not prepare any slides for this. I just wanted to let you know that we are looking at applying for, as you said, a rapid DNA machine with an eye towards mass fatality preparedness. So these, you might be familiar with these machines. They've been used somewhat in or being tested for the purpose of identifying perpetrators or ruling out in or out perpetrators from various crimes. This wouldn't be for that purpose. This would be more for identifying deceased persons in a mass fatality situation. Normally, in fatalities, when we have unidentified persons, we use any number of ways. The most common things we use are dental x-rays to compare our deceased with who we think they might be, and fingerprints. But both of those things depend on having those body parts still intact and available. And it's been shown in, particularly in wildfire episodes, that may not be the case, that there might not be enough left of the person, or the remains may be in such a condition that they can't be handled too much, or their fingerprints are not intact. And so to add to our arsenal, as it were, of ways to identify people, we were looking at applying to acquire one of these machines. I will say that it doesn't have to be our office that acquires it, but just thinking ahead for the county to be prepared for an event, particularly since we've just been through some wildfire events, that it would be a good idea, I think, to have one on hand. We did also run into, with last year's fires, the dental office that we were trying to get dental records from was closed. Luckily, the records were not destroyed in the fire, just that there was no staff available to get us the records. But that's another reason that we would like to have an additional modality for identification, so that we can expedite getting people identified, especially when there are multiple fatalities.
Guys, what does a machine like this cost?
So it's going to be just under $300,000. The total package that we would apply for would be, I believe it's $289,000, costing out the machine and getting it set up here and having some test kits on hand.
Okay.
I'm just gonna add that, my recollection was the sheriff's office had requested or received a rapid DNA testing machine. I don't know if it came through or not, but just for
They have
awareness.
one.
Is it the same machine that,
Don't know, I was gonna ask
or is
Dr.
it,
Singh that.
is it
if-
different?
Oh.
if the
I
sheriff-
actually, I believe it's a similar machine. I think there is some research in the forensic literature about this. They recommend having two on hand. So one for the family assistance center so they can collect family reference samples, and then one at the actual scene of the fatalities or scenes of the fatalities where they can collect the decedent DNA. So if they've got two machines, then that's great. We'll stand down from applying. If they have just one, it might be a good idea for them or us or emergency management or someone to acquire a second one.
So this came up last week. Sheriff Knowles was talking with us because Dr. Singh had asked for a letter of support. And Sheriff Knowles said, we've got one already in our forensic unit. So we wanted to have Dr. Singh come in and talk about the needs for one versus two, and then make sure we're aligning federal asks. So, because this one was not known to the commissioners as you were laying out your federal earmark request through Desimone and through Jeff. So we want to make sure those are coming together and not having them getting multiple different requests out there. So are you aware, Dr. Singh, that the sheriff's office does have one? Were you aware?
One of the vendors that we were talking to did mention that they were working with the sheriff's office. I didn't know where they were in that process. So, right, if they already have one, that's probably a good start. I don't know that we need a second one. We just weren't sure where all the pieces were.
Yeah, I guess we've been going through our process, and I thought we had agreed to our top priority already coming from the county. So if there is already a rapid test machine that the county owns or is in the process of owning through the sheriff's budget, then it seems like maybe waiting on this, because I know our top priority was funding for the expansion of the crisis stabilization center.
Yeah,
I know you don't want to send in competing asks.
I think it would be good to evaluate the ability to coordinate efforts on that machine between our medical examiner
Yes.
and the sheriff's department. So I don't know how heavily it's used. John didn't seem to think there was any concerns about it. It's just, it's not in the location of the medical examiner, but it's here on campus, so.
I think some further conversation between the sheriff's office and the ME.
Yeah, that could be good.
Yeah.
Dr. Singh, if you, either through Sheriff Knowles, I'm sure he can point you in the right direction of his forensics. You probably know the unit. I don't even need to direct you to that. You probably know who
We
they
do
are,
some
so-
work with them, yes.
Yes, a
So,
little bit.
They've met.
Yes. a
yeah,
couple times.
we've encountered each other once in a while. Yes, we'll absolutely work with them. And yeah, I think it would be fine even to have one as long as they're willing to use ours, that we could procure specimens and hand them over to them for that directed testing. That would be great. So, good.
Okay. All right, how's everything else going over there for you?
Oh boy, it's never a dull moment over here. We've got plenty of work to do, maybe too much work to do, but we're plowing through it here.
All right, well, if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, I will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, next up, we have Kyle Tuig. Kyle's gonna talk about parcel boundary line adjustments for the Public Works Operation Building site and general status update.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So we're just here to give a brief update on the Public Works Operations Facility, as well as a little bit of a line adjustment in order to make this project go. Krista Riley's here with me today. She's our project manager on this and doing a fabulous job thus far. We're moving along strong. So just as a general update in the process, this is, we have a multi-phased approach as we have kind of checkpoints throughout this progressive design build delivery methodology. So the phase we're just finishing up is our validation phase. We got a very lovely validation report that comprised of all of the alternatives we've gone through all the stakeholder meetings, really vetting our program requirements and needs, and putting some real cost estimates to it. A big component of that was doing our environmental exploration, understanding that we, what we're gonna have to deal with, getting a strategy together for how we're gonna deal with it and make sure that's not gonna blow the budget up as well. So and then the other big part of that was our pre-development conference with the city, where we got to better understand the requirements that they would have for us moving forward here. And basically, long story short, that report came back great. We think we are good to go moving forward with this project on time and on budget. And so we have a few things to clean up here, and I'm gonna have Krista walk you through this element of it that is a requirement from the city.
So this is our boundary line adjustment that we're proposing. So if you look at the maps, on the left is what it currently is with those two parcels. The one ending in 2428 and 2409 is where the project site is. So what we're proposing is moving those parcel lines, so moving the one that splits those two to the west to break up the parcel ending in 2330, and then also splitting up the parcels north of the site into 3 separate parcels. And that's just to give us more flexibility in the future if we are to sell any of the property. And the reason that we are doing this is that it's actually required by the city if we don't want to go through a mutual use agreement with for the 2 parcels. And the city actually doesn't allow you to cross property lines for water service, so we have to have 2 units on the site. So it just makes it a little bit easier for us to do utilities as well.
Okay. Commissioner French, do you have a question?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple observations. You're creating new lots. Are there was there a previous subdivision of this property that gave you additional lots to be able to retrieve? Because otherwise you're short platting the property, and that's a different process.
Thank you, Al. Good point. I actually just am noticing that line on the left is not what we're gonna do. We're gonna end up with the same number of parcels we had before. This was, we went through this iteration just before we updated, and I forgot to give Krista the right graphic here. So basically, we're just moving that one up to the north. The one on the west stays whole. We are anticipating that when we do have a future redevelopment of this site, we'll probably have to adjust some things again. This makes sure we retain all the parcels originally platted.
Okay, thank you. And then on the after drawing, you've got old parcel lines, and the one to the south looks like it's going through a building. And so you're eliminating that and moving that further to the south. Is that right?
Not exactly.
I'm looking at the white line.
Yeah, those go away.
Go away. Okay. And
Yes.
then just to the south of that, it looks like you've got a parcel line that goes through that building. Is that building staying or is that going?
Going.
Going. Great. Okay. Terrific. No, those were my initial observations. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So we'll be just putting that BLA in. We retain the same number of parcels, same square footage, everything. This just allows us to have our new operations center on a single parcel. If we can go to next slide, Ron. Or you want me to take it?
Sure.
Either way. So as we mentioned, the site exploration's complete. We're through our preliminary design work with all our user groups. We've got one building application in. We got our pre-engineered metal building slammed in before the building code change. Our main office facility will not make that date, so it will be subject to the new building code. We are proposing, we're still waiting to hear back from the West Central Neighborhood Council, right?
We just heard back, so we're on their agenda for April 10th.
Okay, so we will be having a public meeting at the West Central Neighborhood Council on April 10th at their meeting. So hopefully we'll get some better attendance by leveraging the Neighborhood Council meeting there. We still shooting for the first, right, or the second?
For demo?
Yeah.
Yep.
So
April 1st.
we're gonna start demolition and abatement on the 2nd of April. We're just gonna have kind of a light mobility since it's just our demolition sub out there first. And then the contractor's gonna fully mobilize in early May. If you remember, there's kind of 2 warehouses up there. So we're demolishing the southern warehouse. The building that you can literally see has a giant hole that looks like a bomb went through the roof in the north central part of the site, and one other dilapidated structure. So there's 3 structures that'll be going down right away. And we're gonna retain the north warehouse throughout construction because the contractor has worked with us to allow us to continue to operate out of that site with just our 2 crews, our bridge crew and our striping crew, which are the harder ones to move due to the amount of parts and pieces and the striper needing that loading area. So it's great that we're gonna save ourselves that relocation. And then, we're gonna get rolling here in May with site work and utilities. Anticipating, we are gonna have a little bit of a phase, which is basically that pre-engineered metal building, which is what you're seeing in the bottom right corner. That's all our storage. That's where we're gonna park the cranes and the vehicles. It's what I would call lightly conditioned space. We can't let it freeze, but we're not gonna have AC and it's not gonna be 68 degrees inside of there. We just have to keep it from freezing. We are installing, voluntarily from a risk management perspective, a fire suppression system in there, which is not necessarily code required, but risk management thought it would be wise and good for us from a risk perspective and insurance. And then that building that's been dubbed Little Ed, which I can't tell you how we got the names of these buildings here, which is a really cool combined office building with some sort of shop space as well. I mean, our bridge crew has some shop, our sign fabrication areas, our signal testing, our construction materials lab, our nuke room, which is always really fun, the amount of shielding we have to put in to protect our nuke gauges. But everything's going well. We'll have a little bit of covered parking to the north up there. Those are for the rigs that have materials like sign plates and posts and stuff that we're just trying to keep them from the crews from having to dig them out from a foot of snow in the wintertime. But then we go into that second phase and pave out the rest of the site, finish up all our site security and everything along those lines. We're trying to kind of restrict the flow of movement for a safety perspective. So you see those arrows, one coming in off of Cedar on the east, traveling through the site, and then out due south into Walnut, where we kind of go into that dead-ended right away right there. So we have the teams are feeling really good about where this is headed. I'm feeling good about where the budget's going. Timing wise is looking excellent. We're hoping to move in next summer. And then it'll be about around Labor Day, September when we're complete. It adds a couple months to basically let us stay on site because we can't pave the north until we kind of do the flop on the site. But either way, we're still out of there by early fall. Plenty of weather window, and everybody's moving forward.
Commissioner French.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm assuming the entire site is going to be fenced.
Yes, with the only slight exception is on the west side of that site there, because the perimeter will be fenced, but we're not going to put I don't think we intend to put a big gate or fence line in, because that's our laydown area for the central shop, and they're actually going to access it through the site there. So basically, yes, security is one of the top priorities of this whole project. So having perimeter fencing and as few gates as possible is part of our design.
Well, I was just looking at the building on the corner of Sharp and Cedar, as well as the Little Ed building. And they make great canvases for local artwork. And so I was wondering how you were going to deal with that.
That is some of the materiality that we have for the buildings themselves, that hopefully dissuade some of that. The buildings themselves are, frankly, they buy us a lot of fence line, because they are, secure structures. In fact, like, there's not even a door on the south side of Little Ed there. That entrances are from the east and the west. And another component of this site that I'll be bringing before the board is the city. We've been talking about Sharp Avenue there because that street bisects our two operations, our central shop to the south and our public works ops facility to the north. We had discussions with them about vacating that piece of Sharp Street, to which they were quite amenable to, because it really doesn't add much to the circulation in the area. We're the property owner on both sides. However, in further discussions, there was a little bit of hesitation towards permanently buying and the cost of owning that, relocation of structures outside of our property lines. And while they won't do this for many folks because we're a good friend and we're a government agency, the city has offered us a revocable license agreement for Sharp Avenue. Basically says we get to use it, but at some point we give it back. So we don't legally own the property, but we get use and control of it, which for our purposes, because we use Sharp Avenue there for constantly like heavy vehicle loading and unloading. We've got lowboys in there. We're pulling graders on and off right in the street. It's really, we're the only traffic, and there's no need for vehicular circulation in there. So our plan is to actually gate off Sharp Avenue with access gates for public works vehicles. Then we can close up that whole campus at night or in the off hours. But that'll really help with the safety. We're having a lot of safety issues with the central shop to the south there. So we're hoping that, contiguous campus feel and keeping other vehicles and foot traffic out of Sharp will help with that concern, because it's been a challenge.
Commissioner French?
My concern was more about graffiti there on the corner. That existing building already gets a paint job every month or so. So I was more concerned about the graffiti and the looks of the facility for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no. One more slide, Rod.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
what you're saying is if you gated off either side of Sharp there, then you could prevent some artistry, like along the south sides of those two buildings. You might still get something on the.
Well, that's not your main reason for gating it. It's
No, but it would be another benefit.
Ancillary benefit, absolutely. I mean, it's really a safety issue. I mean, we are going back and forth across that street with large pieces of equipment constantly. So we also want to make sure that we don't have another factor involved when we're just trying to keep everybody safe out there.
How well lit is that? I'm just going through my mind as Sharp has never been closed off there, and at night, if somebody, I'm thinking the first week we put those gates up there and someone at night comes speeding through thinking, oh, Sharp's always open, and someone crashes into the new gate.
Yeah, we've been
just want to make sure it's very, very visible.
Yes.
This is now closed. If someone's texting on their phone, speeding home at night or something, it doesn't crash in.
Fortunately, it's a T intersection on the east side, so the west side's where that would be the biggest concern. And we will be making sure there is as much visibility as possible out there, especially the first day we have that up, with a lot of advance notice and signage.
Okay. Yep, Commissioner
I
Jordan?
assume you thanks for the update and thanks for engaging the neighborhood council. I assume you plan to update them on that piece of it too, just to see if there's any feedback from the community on the shark piece. Okay, good.
Take a flip there.
So this slide shows the little Ed on the left there, and then the pre-engineered metal storage building. So starting with the pre-engineered metal storage building, we've got mostly vehicle parking in the north half of that. So like Kyle said, you know, we park a crane in there sometimes. We've got our striping trucks. So that's what that section is going to be. And then the lower section is the unconditioned storage that is going to be mostly equipment. It's going to be pallet racking and then just equipment that they're not using every day, but they do need access to. And then on the west side, the little Ed building, we've got our bridge crew up in the northwest corner. That's like a carpentry shop, and then hit their storage. Then our sign and signal make up the rest of the north part of the building. We have a large training room that we're planning on the bottom left, and I believe we will have a capacity of about 50 people for that. So that'll be used for internal training. So when we have larger public works, even county trainings, we could do those there. We don't really have a great spot for that right now. And then our construction and survey office is just to the right of that. And then our materials testing, which is part of that construction office, is connected to that. And that's where they do the testing that Kyle was alluding to.
And one other really cool benefit of the way this site is laid out is that each crew, for the most part, even in the office facility, has a roll-up door for easy access to loading up pickups, whether it's something that came out of the bridge crews, fab shop, signal equipment, signs and posts that have been fabricated, all our concrete cylinders, material testing, nuke gauges, all that stuff. The staff is gonna have real close proximity vehicular access to all of that.
All right, any additional questions? Nope. All right,
Thank you.
that's great, thank you.
Little Ed, you'll explain that at some point, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we have an answer for you on that.
They architected
It did
it.
start as Big Ed.
Yeah, there's a big Ed, there's a little Ed. Big Ed had basically that entire storage building all built into the one facility.
There you go.
Where Ed came from, I have no clue though.
All right, Scott Chesney, Washington State Office of Financial Management, OFM's population projection for 2026 comp plan update.
Thank you,
Take it
Mr.
away.
Chairman, Commissioners. We have a very simple request in front of you for your action next week, and that is to adopt the OFM mid-level projection. We've got one slide to put up for you. Actually, we've got two. There should be one big, that one. You can see the projection here from 2023 at roughly 550,000. And that middle line takes us up to about 654 at the 2046 horizon. The PTAC, the steering committee, have agreed on this number to go forward. We're asking you for your endorsement of that number essentially as a hypothesis. We're not asking you to approve the number itself. We're asking you to approve that number to go forward and study this as our effort for our land capacity analysis in our urban growth area. If there is some reason for it to change, that would be well down the road. We're committed to at least starting with this number. The reason we're not asking for you to endorse it itself is it implies a whole level of analysis that's still underway, through the land capacity analysis, through the growth analysis, and as a SEPA discussion that would talk about what's 100,000 people going to look like in terms of its environmental impact. Those are steps that are happening down the road. So this is an action in anticipation of a future action that would solidify that number as part of the urban growth analysis and as part of the environmental impact statement that will accompany the comp plan in 26.
Any questions for Scott? I don't think it's crazy to think we could grow 100,000 people in 20 years. That's 5,000 a year.
It's pretty conservative,
Yeah.
really. Any change in the economy that benefits us, anything that gives us an economic development strategy will likely push that up. From our perspective, it's easier to adjust it if we grow higher than if we try to plan higher and grow lower. And part of that is reflecting of our previous criticisms by FutureWise and others that the urban growth area in the past was made too big. We don't want to make that mistake again, and at the same time, we want to be able to be flexible and adapt to this if we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's everything on our printed agenda, so any miscellaneous items?
Yep.
Got a couple?
Yeah, I got a couple. So this I brought up a few weeks ago. This has now started to go around. This is just an amendment to an MOU that we are not actually a party to, but the tribe is requesting, the Spokane tribe is requesting that we approve it anyway. This basically approves exactly what we are wanting. It modifies the MOU so that 80% of the impact funds are paid directly to Airway Heights and 20% are paid directly to us. This is consistent with the agreement that we have already entered and executed on this matter. So this is really just a follow-up. I can have a resolution approving this amendment. And again, we are not directly parties to this amendment, but the tribe is asking that we kind of sign off on it or agree to it, and it is consistent with the rest of that matter. So this is just kind of cleaning it up and finishing it off.
When do you want us to take action on this?
Well, I have a resolution that is ready. It can be by leave this afternoon, or I can put it on next week's agenda.
Any thoughts? The other commissioners, do you want to do by leave or do you want it next
week? Would be good if there's no rush to it.
None that I'm aware of at this point, so.
That's fine.
Let's do it next week then.
Consent agenda, and then the other brief issue, I had a phone call yesterday with Brian Wurst, the airport board's attorney. They are coming up in their negotiations with the Department of Ecology, and they offered to do a briefing for the board on that next week. I indicated that I thought the board would appreciate that, and so I'm working with Gina to get that on the agenda. Commissioner French, you may have more information on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Anderson. So I did have a conversation last week several conversations last week with Mr. Crowder and encouraged him to consider doing executive session and a briefing with both the city and the county and bring us all up to speed with regard to the status of the conversations with Ecology, and as well as status with the conversations with the FAA. Mr. Crowder visited with the FAA folks last week, and we are currently waiting for some information from them that will be critical to our future engagements with Ecology. So I'm encouraged that we're going to be able to do that, and hopefully that additional information will give you insights as to where we're at with Ecology. Thank you.
So they will be here next week to give the board an update on where everything is at.
Sounds good. Commissioner Jordan?
I had a constituent reach out named Cindy Cutler, and she's with the Pet Partners Group. She's requesting the board consider doing another proclamation this year for, their National Therapy Animal Day on April 30th. I think that's something we did last year, so I just wanted to bring it forward and see if we could do it again.
I think we all got the request.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
She said she was
But thank
my
you for bringing it up.
constituent. So
Yo, that's what she said to me too.
okay, well.
She says that to, I bet she says that to everyone.
I think we should do it.
All right,
Sure. I'm good.
Animal therapy.
So
so,
my proclamation is already done, just saying.
man, he's fast.
Pat, I think we probably have one on file from last year.
Yes, I'll get, sign it to Martha Liz, she'll be in touch with you and Chrissy.
Right. Any other miscellaneous items? Commissioner French?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to put on the table, now that we have a constituted advisory board for scraps, to maybe have an update with some of the board members, Kat, Jesse, and just make sure that we're all heading in the same direction. I think the performance of scraps and meeting community expectations, I think, is important to all of us. And now that we have an advisory committee, it would be, I think, important for the board and the advisory committee to make sure that we're all on the same page as we're moving forward, so that there's not any false expectations either from the committee, from scraps, or more importantly, from the public. We put the advisory committee together to basically have public eyes on what we're doing, but let's make sure that those eyes are doing what we wanted to do. So I'd like to just put that on the radar for the board's consideration. Thank you.
I think there'd be value in that. I mean, now that the advisory board is there, I'd kind of like to know what are some of the topics they've discussed. So I know we appointed citizen representatives, but do we have any staff that attends that other than, like, I assume Kat probably sits in on those and Jesse, but
Yeah, Jesse does, Kat does, I believe, two of his team members, probably Nick and Chris probably do as well.
Okay.
Attend them. They're not members of the board.
Yeah.
So there's two that the commissioners appointed that are citizens. The city of Spokane appointed employees, city of Spokane Valley appointed employees, and then there's one, I believe the city of Cheney, city administrator is a small city rep on that board.
so can we work on getting some grouping of folks to come in and kind of just brief us on how that's going?
I can reach out to Kat and Jesse. I think they, I have to see what the frequency is that they meet, but I'd like there to be enough meat of substantive conversation, so they can share some with the commissioners about what they've been working on. So I will reach out to them and get that in the works.
All right. Commissioner Woodruff?
And on that same note, have there been any other further conversations with the city regarding the contract?
I do have an update for you this afternoon.
Okay. Okay. Good, I'm glad the conversations continue. But Commissioner French, I think that's a great idea. Once that board's met a few times and has gotten themselves organized, I don't know if they are electing a chair or what have you, but I think it would be great to speak with members of the board and talk about kind of what are the key areas that we want to work on as a county with scraps.
I agree.
Mr. Vice Chair, I was just gonna mention. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, looks like we've got a message from Kat here. Still working on regular meetings of Scraps Advisory Board. Members have requested quarterly meetings. Okay.
Okay, no chair, okay. Thanks, Kat.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, so that's not totally accurate, and it's my understanding that some of the members have said that there's a much greater urgency than meeting on a quarterly basis, and I think it's actually I know some of them are actually pushing for monthly meetings at a minimum. So I don't think there's unanimity of thought with regard to the frequency of the schedule or even the structure of the committee. That's one of the reasons why I thought it would be advisory from our standpoint to maybe give some direction to them, so to make sure that they're doing what we want them to do. Thank you.
Sounds good.
And I think Commissioner French raises a really good point here. One of our many challenges is that the reference to the advisory board is different in every single contract the county has with every entity that we have a contract with, ranging from 7 members to 5 to no reference of composition, responsibilities, duties, to no reference of the advisory committee whatsoever. So the team has had to wrestle with this to go, how do we bring something together that is very different amongst all of our contracts? And they thought it was the best to bring a larger board, which represents more individuals. Some of the responsibilities that are laid out in the contract are financial only. Some of them are, let's look at the operations and give some suggestions back to Scrap's team as far as community interest is. So they're trying to meld a very disjointed contractual situation that we have. So I think to the extent that the board has an opportunity, this board has an opportunity to give some insights to them based on what they've come up with for compositions, roles, responsibilities, and make sure it's reflecting according to what you all want to see as well.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, so I do know that when we were under the leadership of Nancy Hill, that our community support was pretty substantial. And in fact, we got quite a bit of money from community fundraisers and nonprofits that helped contribute to our budget. I don't think that that's happened recently, clearly not to the same level it used to. And I think that's one of the opportunities that's available for us to improve that relationship and hopefully get back to where we were also the beneficiary of financial support to help drive some of the programs that I think everybody would love to be able to see at Scraps. So, it's just trying to get us back to where we were pre-COVID. I think COVID is really, we still suffer from some of the pains of that, but how do we get back to where we were? So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so we'll get something put together for a presentation soon on that. Okay. Any other
Jeff and Heather do.
Jeff and Heather, all right.
We have a couple ARP issues that just came up. First being, you'll recall, we put about $258,000 into the disaster recovery for match. Yesterday, we learned the state is not able to, I don't know what the word is, they will not be changing our contract to change the wording to allow us to not call it match. So good news is you have $258,000 you can spend elsewhere. The bad news is that's going to be a direct hit to general fund or whatever other source. And then also keep in mind any of the public sector FEMA dollars that come our direction also require match. So I don't know if we're spending at a level to need the full 1.25. We'll know as we get closer to the end of June what bills are coming through.
So essentially what you're saying, we can't use ARP as the match. We have to use.
We can use it for disaster recovery, but it cannot be considered match.
Okay. Is there anywhere in our budget that we can essentially supplant where we can pull funds or plug in the ARP and use those dollars for match? So essentially it's a wash?
We could find, for example, staffing that would qualify for ARP, that would come out of general fund.
And then replace it with the ARP. So that's probably the simplest way, so nobody ends up hurt, so I guess in it as far as the numbers go.
So we can bring back some ideas or thoughts on that. The second.
There's a lot of shell game with ARP, unfortunately.
We just call it creative accounting.
Yes.
It's all legal for the record.
No, it is. Yeah. Just shuffling of papers.
Just making sure the right accounts pay the right bills and the right money.
Yeah.
So so we're all good on that one. The second is a contract that we would like your permission to execute the severance clause. CLA is a national accounting firm that it was actually our very first award to help us distribute the funds. We use them and it worked very well as we put out the RFPs, received RFPs. At that stage of the game, they were very willing to tweak their on-site portal database to, we were talking with them multiple times every week. Things were working great. Their intention was to, as we move more to the monitoring phase that we're in now, was to make the website kind of at the click of a button, everything that gets uploaded to the website would go to the US Treasury portal. And then the grants team would go back through and give it that final check, but a lot of the work would be done electronically. About 2 weeks ago, we put in the request reminding them a lot of our category lines, particularly those in the human services, nonprofit world, we have a lot of data that we're required to collect and report. And their portal wasn't even prompting for that data to be received, let alone to have a place to actually collect it. So Jessica in Heather's shop put in the request, just saying, can you add these fields so we can collect the data? They let us know that that would require a contract amendment, update, and a renegotiation of financial terms. If they're obviously not that interested in doing it, in my opinion, with that response. When Arian went full-time to Broadlink and Grants took on the monitoring ARP side, they have moved everything into their normal grant system already. So at this point, instead of having lawyer to lawyer go back and forth for weeks coming up with terms to get them to do something that, not an IT person, doesn't seem that difficult to add a few fields to collect data. They don't want to do it. Heather and team says, well, CLA was great on the RFP part. We don't have to use them now. We are paying them $100,000 a year. The contract was $500,000. There was a $5,000 upfront fee and then $100,000 a year. So it comes out to $83.33 every month. It's a 60-day termination clause. If we terminated it, that would be 2 years and 7 months. Assuming if it was terminated this month, we'd still be paying for April and May. So we'd have 7 months left this year, 2 more years, that'd be about $258,000. With a lot of threes after it, that would come back. So wanted to get your feedback, and it's somewhat timely that it's an $8,300 a month question.
So you recommend that we cancel it?
Correct. We're not using it for the billing. It isn't user friendly enough to get the billing out of. And the reporting is not asking anything that we need for the annual report. And it's not asking what we need for the quarterly report either. All of those metrics aren't there. So we're going to have to create a quarterly report that gets what we need. So if we're doing that, then we won't be using it for anything.
I think to give CLA a little defense here, I don't think any of us were expecting 17 versions of the quote final rules. And so that's probably was a lot on them. The bottom line, it hasn't happened. And it'd be $250,000 plus back to the county.
I'd support you in doing what you recommend on this one then. I mean, you guys are kind of our experts on ARP. Scott?
I think it's fair to say to date, they've served the need that we were initially intending them to do.
Phase one, they were great.
And then now we need some additional evaluation, data, information. I think plussing up Heather's team would be a better use of the dollars. She's obviously got a lot of work that she's gotta do on ARP, on compliance and monitoring, and still doing it today. We also have some opioid stuff that's gonna be coming through, and we have some opioid dollars. Remember, we have up to 10% that we can use for our own internal admin stuff. That would also be helpful for Heather's team as well, so.
The company did well, it's just ARP's evolved and
they were
it's
really
evolved
good
into
in
something
the
where we
RFP
need,
process.
we need someone else's services at this point, so.
I agree.
So I got 3 here. We will then work on, first time down this path with ARP, we will work with Dale to get whatever we need.
Sounds
And
good.
you'll see it on an upcoming agenda then.
All right. Thank you for all the work you both are doing.
Thanks.
Staying busy.
Any other miscellaneous?
Got one?
Go for it.
We do have our application to the PRC for the joint Moran, or the West Plains and the Lansbury Park. That is scheduled for the 28th. That will be presenting. It is also recommended for a progressive design build, so the terminology you're hearing from Kyle will be very similar terminology you hear from those two combined parks projects. So
Great.
we think we're positioned well. We'll see how it goes, but we should know that day, right after we present,
What was the date again?
28th. I think it's a Thursday.
One of the afternoon briefings.
Okay. We've already got our known committee members who are gonna be on that too.
So just to clarify, so you're talking about the new West Plains Park and,
Plants Ferry, phase
so
one.
what about the, so the final decisions have been made then about what parts can be built out with the dollars that are available?
Yeah, we have to
Cause
be.
I thought we were kind of, there were some pieces that we would like to do,
Yes.
but maybe we didn't quite have enough ARPA dollars. And one thing we had discussed was whether or not to use some of the local sports tourism funds.
Yep, so the flexibility remains. We're going in with, while we've done master plans on both of them, we're very much positioning as proof of concepts. We don't wanna lock ourselves into saying it's final, because it's not final. We obviously can only take design to a certain point before we actually go. We need to have an open, competitive bidding process for the joint contractor and designer. It's just very important that they have flexibility to bring us the best value and opportunities for scope. And one of the benefits of progressive design is we have some contingencies on there. As our known contingencies are addressed, we might be able to release those and then have additional scope opportunities as well. So that'll bring in where if there is a desire to do more to meet all the elements that are desired in both of those. Remember, this is only phase one in plants, so it's the 3 synthetic fields
Right.
that are concepted.
Okay.
But then we'll have the opportunity to come back to the commission and say, hey, here's kind of what the ability to, what we can get with the 11 million. And if there's a desire to do broader, here's what the dollars would look like, and here's some sources of funds that we could tap into.
But this will be, we gotta get moving, cause we gotta, if we wanna use the ARPA funds, then we gotta, do the RFP process and go through the process of and then we'll get a better sense of the bids, I guess, in essence, that come in.
The timeline, as I recall, has us going out for RFP. We're ready with the RFP right after, if we get approval.
Right.
Assuming we get approval, we'll almost immediately get an RFP in front of the board to get on the street with a targeted, I think, June-ish timeframe to come back with the board with a recommendation of the contractor designer. And then our schedule shows that we should be able to have our GMP. So we'll already have the obligation well before the end of the year for the ARP funds. But we'll have our first GMP before the end of the year as well.
But we're going out saying this is the dollar amount we have. Tell us what
Our
you can
scope
do.
is $11 million.
Okay.
Pat, anything that needs to be on our radar? Media reaching out about anything?
Yes, we have a request about the red light status at the jail from one of the outlets, and we'll get back to them. We have a request for an interview for the chair based on yesterday's presentation from the prosecutor. And then one other thing to know about website related, the board had desired to have rosters for boards and commissions on the site is then assigned to the clerk's office. Jessica did a training yesterday with Shelley, the deputy clerk, and we should have good progress on that, if not 75% complete. As you can imagine, it's a lot of names and contact information that changes with some regularity, so update there. And I know we've got, I'll be bringing forward a protocol document for tours and for video project requests and for website changes in the next few weeks. So individual commissioners have questions about that kind of stuff, just see me.
All right.
The intent of the boards and commissions is to have every one of those web pages consistent look and feel. So members that are on there, named, terms, minutes, access to it, so everything has a similar, if anyone wanted to go and look at the no shooting or the veterans board or whatever, it's very consistent across the way. So Gina and Shelley are working on that, so they can do a refresh of those things along with a refresh of our website.
That's great.
And Shelley is also putting together, right, like a spreadsheet, so we can see which positions are coming up, so we can get those out to the community and get those filled.
Absolutely. So you'll know then if someone is coming up for a renewal, if they have expressed that they want to renew and they're in one of your districts, you can, give the head nod, yep, let's do that. If they're saying they don't want to serve anymore, then you'll know that there's an opening and can start socializing that. We'll get them posted as well.
Thank you.
Sure. I was just gonna add, Mr. Vice Chair, if individual commissioners would add that page to their newsletters about boards and commissions, help advertise those positions. We can also share on the social media, and if there's any significant ones, not that they're all not significant, but if there's a significant number that come available, I would recommend a press release to the board.
Sounds good. And for today with the proclamations, photograph at 1:45?
Yes.
Did I see that?
1:45, please be outside between the buildings here in the courtyard. We'll gather you together for this.
All right.
Stop at the front if you have not signed the proclamation.
Oh yeah, swing by the proclamations for signature out front, so. Okay, around the room, anything else miscellaneous? No? Okay, well then in that case, it is 10:25 and we have completed our morning business, so we will reconvene at 2 p.m. in our hearing room today, so we are adjourned for the morning.